welcome to Books and Things. And I've had a couple of weeks off, and it's been nice, but I missed my show. You might want to tape this show. This is a timely program. What with the Me Too and Time Is Up programs going on, we have the teenage dating violence going on. Verbal, physical, and mental abuse doesn't start with adults. It starts a lot sooner. And to discuss this with us is Linda Blozie, Director in Training and Prevention, and Kris, Wraight, Associate Director of Prevention, Education, and Restorative at Safe Beaches. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
As I told you, I saw an article, I think it was either in the paper or on Facebook, and I thought, teen violence, that's interesting, and you don't hear anything about that. And I thought that this would be a great program to talk to our audience and let them know that this is going on. And I'm sure it's not merely a slap on the face or something. I'm sure it's a lot more. And we see a lot of it on TV where they're tormenting each other, and you think, oh, stop it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, where are you out of?
So I am with the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We're out of Wethersfield, Connecticut.
Okay.
And I'm with Safe Futures, which is the Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence Prevention Agency for New London County. So we're based out of New London.
All right, and the teen violence is part of the program.
Yeah, for both of us, teen dating violence is part of it. Actually, probably more you, Kris, than me. But I think when you and I talked, what prompted this is that through CCADV, we issued a toolkit because February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And so we really wanted to distribute this widely so people became aware of the fact that it is occurring, what it is, and what people can do to prevent it.
That was what I saw on your website, was the teen violence. Can people go on and just copy that or print it out?
Absolutely. It's there for anybody who has an interest in kids and teens to use. It gives you a little bit of information about teen dating violence. It gives you some tips and tactics. It gives you some activities that you can do. And it's not exclusive to February. It just happened that we published it because February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month.
There's an app, the Teen Violence Toolkit. You might think it comes in a box, but it doesn't. It's about 8 pages?
Yeah, it's about 8 pages, and it gives you a bunch of activities that you can do, but it also gives you how to conduct those activities as well. So it doesn't just tell you, try doing this. There's all the materials that you would need.
Well, it's very well written. Obviously, somebody put a lot of time in this. Teenage awareness activities. I mean, I only copied down a few of the pages, but it's just so much there. I think it probably goes on more than we know, and we don't hear it. And I know I never heard of it, but I'm sure it was there. And what is teen violence, dating violence?
Well, we define teen dating violence as any pattern of behaviors where one partner in the relationship, whether it's a heterosexual couple or a same-sex couple, does a behavior repeatedly or a pattern of behaviors to try and control their partner. So that can look like a million different unhealthy behaviors, from physical contact that's unwanted or not consensual to humiliating your partner, controlling who they hang out with, using technology or going through your partner's phone, or trying to use an app to locate them where they are and follow them. There's a million different unhealthy behaviors, but it's typically a pattern of control.
Now, is this a big reporting thing? I mean, do teenagers report this, or does it just go to the police department and that's the end of it?
Well, I think there's a couple kind of reports that are out there. So the one report that I referenced in this toolkit that we wrote was a report that's a survey that's conducted by the Department of Public Health in Connecticut. And what they do is they go out and they take a sample of high school students, and they ask them about a whole bunch of different behaviors, including smoking and drinking. But, in relation to what we do, they talk about unwanted sex, physical contact, abusive behaviors. And generally what they say is around 10% of all females who reported through the survey said that they've experienced some kind of abusive behavior in their relationship, and about 8% of boys. When it goes on, it's like 1 out of every 12 have been asked to have sex when they didn't want to. 1 out of every 10 have been physically abused in their relationship. And then there's the whole kind of, for lack of a better word, criminal component of it as well. So, yes, sometimes it rises to the occasion where someone may have to call the police, and then the police have to get involved. And so, what they can do is offer orders of protection. They can detain the individual, but then there's orders of protection and other things to help people keep safe.
Yeah, and those protective orders aren't usually all that great. It's nice to have one, but...
Well, it's nice to have one, but it's as good as somebody's ability to abide by the law, is what I say.
Right.
And if they don't, it's over.
We recently we were surveying students around New London County to just compare that data with what we're seeing at a statewide level and national level to understand the scope of the problem locally. And one of the real striking statistics that we saw was about 22% of the 1,500 students we surveyed said that they didn't feel like they could think of an adult who they could turn to tell if they experienced something like this.
That's tough.
So one of the things we're always trying to talk to teachers in schools and families is don't underestimate the role you could play in a young person's life to be that safe person that they could trust to tell about something like this.
Yeah, I can see that. How do you go to an adult and say, my boyfriend's beating me up?
Well, I think sometimes...
Oh, my girlfriend's beating me up.
Yeah, and I think sometimes what happens is that I think, first of all, the way in which young people come together now is certainly much different than the way they came together when I was younger.
Yeah.
And, I hear a lot of things about, well, my parents didn't know I had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, so how can I talk about that? They didn't know I was sexually involved, and they'd be disappointed in me, so how can I go to them and talk about that?
Yeah.
I'm sure you see a lot of other things as well in regards to that.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of fear young people are trying to prove themselves, right, as independent and capable.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of fear when things go awry in their relationships that to ask for help is somehow indicative of they couldn't handle themselves.
Yeah,
I think there's also a lot of fear on the adults' parts, which of their young people ending up in relationships that aren't healthy, which I think then leads some adults to spend less time actually discussing relationships and what a healthy relationship should look like for their young person. Out of fear and wanting to protect their young people, they just don't talk about it.
Right.
Or just don't condone relationships at all and say you can't date, which isn't.
And she's
proving
probably
effective.
really in love with this guy and just doesn't see what he's doing to her.
Sometimes, sometimes sometimes I think that happens, and then sometimes there'll be a lot of excuses for somebody's behavior as well. But I want to go back to what Kris said, because I was reading through a study recently that indicated somewhere around 80% of adults are not aware of the issue of teen dating violence. And, we have to realize that whether we want our children to date or not, at some point, they're going to probably try that,
Right.
Try it out. So are we not preparing them for what possibly could happen if we dismiss the fact that they could be in a relationship?
Right.
I think television is doing everybody a big service with a lot of the programs that they're showing. They're into heroin, they're into people beating each other. And yeah, it's a TV show, and it's probably not true, but it's so close to being a fact. And I think people are saying, yeah, that happened to me. Like the Me Too program. I think that there's so much of it out there.
Yeah.
And in the 60s, it was okay. Nobody complained. And then all of a sudden, people started saying, you know, he did that, or she did that, and let's tell the world about it.
Yeah, I think the media can provide an opportunity for really valuable discussions to happen. I would encourage more families, whether or not you're watching programs together, adults to watch some of the programs that young people are watching, you know, whether it's the Switched at Births or Fosters or 13 Reasons Why, but then like talk about those programs with young people, because they really do portray a lot of important nuances happening in relationships. But if you then aren't talking to young people about them to help them understand and think through, did they see any relationships like that? Did they have friends who have ever been through something like that? If we don't work really hard as adults to create space for the conversations, then young people aren't going to feel safe enough bringing it up to us.
I think you're right about that. I think we do have to create those spaces, and I agree with Kris in the sense that, you know, one of the things that I do to prepare myself when I'm doing some working with youth is you do have to watch those shows. You know, so I'll watch the Fosters, I'll watch other shows so that I can see what it is that kids are looking at as well, what they're listening to, what they're hearing, because the media does have a way of being able to send a message about, you know, inappropriate behavior and what people can do to help. I mean, even this show today is if we don't do anything but make people aware about teen dating violence, you know, the more we put it out there, the more it can't be ignored in a way.
That's why I was so happy when you said yes, because it's a subject that should be out there, should be everywhere.
Right.
And kids should not be afraid to turn it in, because they're going to get slapped again. They shouldn't be afraid, and as you say, have an adult to talk to.
Yeah.
And usually, I think the people at school have somebody they'd be able to talk to.
Yeah, I think
counselors and
yeah, and I think there are people to turn to, but again, it's challenging because relationships aren't, you know, a boyfriend or girlfriend isn't just strictly abusive. They're also wonderful and kind and caring and popular and really supportive and a great listener on the one hand, but then they get really jealous and accuse me of flirting with this other person. And so it's tricky, it's confusing, it's not cut and dry. If it were just the physical abuse, I think people have a pretty good understanding these days that physical abuse isn't okay in an intimate partnership. But what gets really confusing is when my boyfriend tells me not to hang out with this other boy because that boy's trying to flirt with me. Now that gets confusing because my boyfriend's telling me he's just being protective. Or when my girlfriend wants to go through my phone and see who I've been messaging, and she tells me it's just because she couldn't trust her last boyfriend or girlfriend. That gets more confusing. And so I don't even always know whether or not I need to go to the guidance counselor to talk about it, because this is the first relationship I've been in and I don't have a sense of what's normal and healthy, and no adults ever talk to me about it.
And he or she really cares about me because they're checking up on the...
Yeah,
right.
And they say that. And for the most part, the truth is that they do. It's not necessarily in the best manner, but if you ask that person, do you care about them? They'll say yes, absolutely, I care about them.
I've had my wife, I'm not going to tell you which one, say, go in my purse and get my wallet or something. I don't go in your purse. No.
Yep.
Because sure enough, if I see something in that purse that's wrong, I'm going to say something. No, I don't go in the purse. Don't go in my wallet. Don't go in my purse. Period.
But you're respecting her privacy in that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Kris, if you see this, but a lot of times what I'll see is that kind of misperception that jealousy equals love.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, he's so protective or she's so protective. They're jealous. They love me so much.
Right.
Whereas they interpret it as love, I interpret it as control.
Yeah.
Yeah, jealousy can get carried away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get very serious.
Yeah.
And people have ended up dead. And it's,
So, I mean, I think Kris has some interesting information kind of about what she does and her team does on a day-to-day basis, because we are out there, we are trying to educate young people about healthy behaviors, about good boundaries, those types of things. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that, Kris.
Sure. Yeah. So while Safe Futures provides services to individuals and families who are currently in domestic violence situations, and we have a variety of services from our counseling and hotline and emergency shelter and transitional living. Our real goal is that if we could educate enough young people, if we could work with enough young people and their families to let them know what is healthy, what are the red flags to abuse, if we could give them and equip them with the skills to solve their conflicts nonviolently, that one day agencies like Safe Futures and the coalitions that support us, like CCADV, could shut their doors, because we could create a southeastern Connecticut or a broader Connecticut where intimate partner violence, family violence just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So every year we educate about 5,000 students at elementary, middle, and high school level. We teach social emotional skills around staying in control of your emotions, anger management, conflict resolution skills, at an elementary and middle school level, but then upper middle school we start to talk about healthy dating relationships. What are your boundaries? How do you express those boundaries? How do you assertively communicate what your needs are? We do a lot of interactive activity exploration to help young people both recognize what the warning signs are, but then what are the healthy aspects that they deserve, and have a responsibility to give. Because when we look at teen dating violence, it's not just about identifying the victims, it's also identifying the fact that we're going to have friends and family members who perpetrate violence, and how can we be allies to one another and speak up against that when we see it happening.
Now, you said you go to schools,
Correct.
and they're more than happy to let you in.
Yeah, I mean, schools have, an enormous amount of pressure to meet sort of state mandates and tests, but I think schools recognize the importance of equipping their young people with the social emotional skills they need to be able to handle the conflicts in their lives.
Do you think too much education might be too much?
No.
No.
That
That they might be
there's
looking
things
for.
they're not ready for, or
Yeah, they might be looking for something that's not happening.
Oh, I
there.
see what you're saying, in the sense of let's not talk about it, because if we talk about it, then it's going to
Yeah.
create it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, not necessarily create it, but make the person more aware of what's going on, and maybe a little too aware.
It seems to me that some of the approaches that we take are not coming from a place of weakness. It's more coming from a place of strength. So instead of going in and saying like, don't be abusive, don't be abusive, what we're really trying to teach is how to manage your relationship, how to have healthy boundaries, how to communicate positively so that it never turns out into something that somebody has to intervene in.
Yeah.
So I think we take it from a strengths-based approach, and I don't think you're ever too young to start to learn those messages. So, when we start out, it's not necessarily, we're not talking to first graders about their intimate relationship, but we are talking to them about space and boundaries and how to treat people with respect, and those types of things is more of the approach that we're taking.
yeah.
So by the time you get up into your high school years, you will have all that background and then hopefully successfully go into a dating relationship.
Right. Yeah, at younger levels, we're oftentimes talking about conflict resolution at a friendship or family level.
Right, absolutely.
How do you deal with those frustrations?
Well, I agree that kids should be educated. They should know what to look for. It would save a lot of problems. And I don't know. It's just, everything just seems to be so upside down today that, and kids have got so much to worry about. They're
That's so true.
not learning basics, they're learning computers, and they're learning everything on a computer.
Yeah.
And they're learning more than you and I know.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
And
But I think we look at those things and we take those things that those methods that they're learning, and we use those to educate them also. I mean, our TD411 is a perfect example of that. So that's an app that we created out of CCADV specifically to talk about healthy relationships. So it's kind of TD411, the information on teen dating violence, or on teen dating actually. But it was developed with kids in mind, using feedback from kids. It's really youth-oriented because sometimes they're not necessarily going to reach out and call a hotline. So if they're apprehensive about doing that, they can use this app to communicate, to figure out if their relationship is healthy, is abusive, how they can get information to help them with them in that way as well.
And what's CCA?
DV?
Yeah.
The Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
Oh, okay.
That's our acronym for that.
Well, sometimes it's a little.
Yes, yeah.
So now we know what you're talking about.
Yep.
And I think we have so much to discuss. How prevalent is it in Connecticut?
I mean, I think that it's probably no more or less prevalent than what we see in any other community. I mean, we're seeing about 1 out of every 10 students, I would say, have had some exposure, whether it be on the low end of emotional abuse all the way up to being stalked, threatened and stalked as well. You know, I've seen a range of situations from where someone may be being humiliated, being made fun of, their dress, their friends, their this, that, all the way up into some very serious situations where their partners are, you know, standing outside their bedroom door, stalking them, even though there's an order of protection in place. So it runs the gamut in the same way that I think domestic violence does too. I mean, I don't know what you see, Kris, in terms of maybe through the school systems, what are the most prevalent issues? I mean, technology is a big thing too.
Yeah, when we did some of our recent numbers, and we still have surveys coming in, but of the 1,500 we've surveyed so far, about 32% said that they had dated someone who had yelled at them, threatened, humiliated, or told them where they could go and who they could hang out with at least once.
Wow.
So, again, you know, maybe this says at least once.
I
So
wouldn't
maybe,
even tell my wife to do that.
maybe it wasn't repeated. You know, obviously, there's a real balance in talking to young people about healthy relationships without trying to paint a picture that healthy relationships are perfect and happily ever after. Right? There's a balance to talking about the fact that conflict exists in relationships.
Yeah.
People do make mistakes, but where's the line and difference between someone making a mistake, genuinely owning that they made a mistake and working very hard to change that mistake, from someone who just minimizes, makes excuses, says they're going to change, but has no intention of doing so.
Let me ask you about parental abuse. Not toward the kids, but
Domestic violence between
the kids
the parents.
seeing the
Yeah.
parental abuse
Yeah.
between them. Do you think that charges a kid up to, well, my mother and father did it, so.
It can, you know, statistics are sort of all over the place, but some believe that it can increase one's chance to then perpetrate violence if that is what you have grown up with and seen as normal.
And I grew up thinking that my mother was on a pedestal, and my father with a daughter. And so I figured that I'd get married and do the same thing. But if he beat her all the time, I may have beaten a wife.
I think it clearly, even if you don't grow up to perpetrate violence, I think it's clearly impactful on you.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're a young child or whether you're a teenager, I think there's just a whole range of stuff that we're looking at now, how kids who are exposed to domestic violence have, you know,
that's the thing.
adjustment problems in schools,
Do I
potential.
want to be like my father, or do I want to be different?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know,
And who do I want to be? I think, some problems exist where you might have a teenage boy who steps in the way and tries to protect his mom.
Yeah.
And ends up having problems. So I think it's just, I think it's not necessarily likely that somebody's going to do that just because they saw it. But if we don't do something else to change that behavior or to help them to see that there's other ways to behave, yes, somebody can go on to do that. But you can grow up in a, I use this term loosely, but all-American family and still go on to perpetrate violence.
Right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is still about how you think that you should, what you think you, or how you think you should treat your partner as well.
What you think you have a right to do.
Yes, exactly.
I think Frank adjusted my clock and makes it run too fast because we got about a couple minutes left.
Okay.
Wow.
So, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would like for people to know that there's help out there for everybody. And I know that we have a couple of helplines on a statewide level.
Can we get those helplines up, Frank?
Our helpline is 888-774-2900. But there's help right here in your community, locally as well. And if you think that you might be in an abusive relationship, I encourage you to call. If you think that you might wonder if your behavior is abusive, I would encourage you to call.
Yeah, so our number at Safe Futures, our hotline is 860-701-6000. It's a 24/7 hotline. You can call it any time of day, any day of the year, and one of our advocates will answer and happily answer any questions you have or talk through any situations, whether you're going through it or it's someone you know. We're here for you.
And if you can't remember those numbers, call me. I'll have them someplace for you. We got a couple of minutes left. And along the lines of being nice to people, I'd like you to read the Stonington Times today, February 8th. On the front cover is the Mystic Middle School performing thousands of acts of kindness. And we should all follow these rules. Smile at everyone, and you'd be surprised you may smile back. But read the article. It's a tremendous article. It's something that they've done all day long, and just doing nice things to each other.
Nice.
This is February, and the month is short, but we got a lot of memorable dates. Marie's birthday is the 10th. My son Todd and my friend Rich is on the 12th, which is also Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And we can't forget the 14th, so go out and buy your favorite person something good, or not. Take them out to dinner, I don't care. Anyway, happy Valentine's Day on the 14th. And for those who like fish and chips, Park Duck VFW will have fish and chips on Friday. That's tomorrow, the 9th, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And for takeout, call 860-599-2404. Spring is just around the corner. Take a peek, look out the door. It's nice, not bad today. But it's coming. Let me know about the shows, what kind of shows you like. Email me at santostom@comcast.net. And please check my Facebook page, Books and Things with Tom, for updates. Special thanks to Frank at the SEC TV for helping me host this show. And by the way, we operate on donations if you'd like to spare a couple of dollars. Thank you for watching. You should be reading. Cuddle up with a good book on these cold nights. And be kind, smile, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us,
Thank you.
Tom.